How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Killmark Collectors. Today we're finishing our series on first-time fleet commanders, and we're going to be talking about the important decisions, maneuvers, and some numbers and stats that you need to be aware of as you go into battle for the first time. There's going to be three main areas that I want to talk about today. The first is going to be the decision making and target calling that you need to do. This is going to be really important, especially in the heat of the moment. You don't want to be splitting your DPS. So knowing how to call targets and which ones to call can be the difference between victory and defeat. Number two, we're going to talk about a couple of key maneuvers and commands that you can issue, just really to kind of help get your fleet all on the same page. Again, be moving as a cohesive unit. And then finally, we'll talk about some important ranges and how you can use them to your advantage throughout a battle. Starting with number one, we're going to focus on target calling. Now, this is something that you can do kind of just by the seat of your pants in a lot of cases. Know that I target the logic first and then we go from there. But you will be able to take your game to the next level if you're able to call targets and do it in such a way that maximizes the effectiveness of your fleet. Now, I'm going to use the TimeHonored acronym here that I just made up 15 minutes ago of let's go exterminate some bad broccoli. I was going to use another B word there at the end, but YouTube and family-friendly things. Now, what this stands for is Logi, Guardian, E-War, small ships, battle cruisers, and battleships. The reason that we're going to be going in this order is because A, the Logi is always going to be keeping people alive longer than they should be, or than we want them to be. B, Guardians are going to be really giving that kind of tough outer shell that we want to crack in order to get into that gooey middle. It is all the fragile glass cannons. And then the E-War is going to be next because we want to make sure that we're not limiting our effectiveness, or we're not letting the enemy limit our effectiveness as we go forward and try to fight, especially with some of those big battleships that make great targets for that E-War. Now, I do know that E-War right now does not play a huge role, but as we continue to move forward and the meta continues to evolve, I think that's only going to take more and more precedent. So just be aware and think about how you can focus those E-War ships down, and just go ahead and start training yourself to look for those in the fleet compositions. Next, we're going to be looking at the small ships. This is going to be cruisers, destroyers, frigates. The frigates and destroyers primarily because they are going to be tackle. I'll talk about in just a minute here why we want to focus on cruisers next. And then finally, we're going to be looking at the assault battle cruisers and then the battleships themselves. Now, there is a reason for looking at them this way, and I know that it is often tempting to go for the biggest, most expensive ship right off the bat, and in some cases that's the right call. If you are, for example, in a small group roam, you're trying to kill a target before backup arrives, it might be the right call to go after that target. However, by and large, it's better to focus on the small ships first to get their DPS off the field and then slowly move your way up so that you're getting the most bang for your buck in terms of removing DPS as quickly as possible. To illustrate this point, I've set up a quick scenario kind of in Excel. What I'm going to do is basically assume that you are jumping in and you are fighting a fleet that has a Tempest and then 3 SFIs. The Tempest has 1200 DPS cold, that's what my Tempest has right now. And then the SFIs each have 500 DPS. In terms of EHP, the Tempest is going to have 113,000 EHP. That's with all of the resists and shield hardeners running. And then similarly, the Stabber is going to have 22,000 EHP. Again, this is all based off of what I run on my ships themselves. Now, when we start looking at this, if we were to target the battleship first, because we are leaving that DPS on the field the entire time for the SFIs, we end up with almost a 25,000 DPS applied to our fleet more than if we were to focus down the SFIs first. Now, this obviously doesn't take into account boosters, extenders, or Logi, but you kind of get the picture. If we focus on those small ships, it's going to get them off the field, and the boosters and the extenders and all that stuff is only going to benefit those bigger, heavier ships anyways, which is going to extend the amount of time that they are on the field and the other ships are doing damage while we're trying to break that tank. Just use this kind of, again, as an example. Don't hold it as gospel, but hopefully it gives you an idea of why you should be looking and taking off those small ships first and then going to the bigger battleships. Now that we know how to call targets and what to look for, the next thing is actually being on field and being able to call those out and get your fleet aware of what you're going to be taking next. In the video that we did with the Catch-22, the Capture the Flag war game, you can see an example of this. What you want to do is you want to be broadcasting your fleet to lock a target. Then as they are locking that, go ahead and broadcast a second one so that there is one locking while you are starting to shoot on the first target. The reason this is important, especially as we get into battleships, is that scan res is so bad that if we don't start locking early, we're going to waste cycles of time where we could be shooting just sitting there waiting to lock. So always be thinking about not just the target that you're currently shooting at, but also the next one that you want to be locking so that you're ready to start shooting the minute that you can. One other quick thing here is that when we do start talking about using strike fit ships, I want you to be sending the lock command, not the focused fire. The reason that we want to do this is because the whole point of a sniper fleet and a strike fit fleet is that we want to try to alpha a target down as quickly as possible, preferably in one salvo. If we're not able to do that, that enemy knows that we are suddenly targeting them, and they can call for reps, they can pop an extender, a DCU, something like that, and we end up having to prolong that engagement, maybe take a second or third round to try to kill that target. If we're able to all fire at once, so by just locking the fleet, and then once everybody's there, you give 5 or 10 seconds, then you all hit your guns at one time, you are able to, again, hit as much alpha damage and try to wipe that target off the field in one fell swoop before they can do anything to stop you. When we are looking at the target priority, we want to focus not just on the targets themselves in terms of what they look like, but if somebody is out of a bubble, we want to take the opportunity to break and to find them and take that ship out, because again, it's a moment of weakness, and we'll be able to remove that DPS from the field so that we don't have to deal with it moving forward. When you are locking targets and broadcasting, you don't necessarily have to have every single ship on a single target. What I mean by that is, in particular, if you have ships that have bonuses or that are specifically designed for tackle, let's say that you have an Armageddon that's got some really long-range newts, you may want them to be focusing down a Logi target while the rest of the fleet is focusing on something that's out of the bubble. That Armageddon can be newting the crap out of a Scythe or a Logi Cane or something like that, and then that way they are basically incapacitated and they can't help heal the enemy Guardian. Similarly, if you've got tackle, don't feel like you have to have them on the small ships. Many times it's better for them to be tackling a big battleship or something like that, so that you can actually have them pinned down and you can kill them when you eventually get to them. A couple of other maneuvers that you need to be aware of, similar to what we dealt with in the Eve Echoes battle, you can position scepters and other ships around the battlefield so that you give yourself different warp points if your fleet gets in trouble. When you do this, because you're going to be the anchor, you should be able to approach that ship, and as long as you were greater than 150 kilometers away, you can warp your entire fleet to that ship and reposition and reset a little bit so that you can get out of range or position yourself in a better way to give yourself some breathing room. One other thing that you need to be aware of is, as you warp, everybody will lose that anchor, and so whether you're getting into a system or getting onto grid, be sure to have your Guardian go ahead and broadcast for reps and capacitor. Again, you need to make sure that all of your command filters are set. Again, I made a video about that and I can link it up above. But make sure that you are actually having that Guardian broadcast. Everybody sees that. They can quickly lock. They can approach so that they don't have to scroll through and try to find them in the overview. They can then unlock, make sure they do that so they don't start shooting, and then you'll be able to quickly approach and anchor up. The last thing that I want to talk about is moving as you are getting to and from your destination system. The big thing that you need to remember is that not everybody is going to move at the same speed, so you do want to be using the approach, warp, jump sequence. That is that you have everybody jump into the system, you then spam that approach command so that everybody is aligning at the same time. Specifically, if you have battleships, you're probably going to need to wait about 5 to 10 seconds to make sure that everybody is actually aligned and moving in that direction, and then you warp the fleet as one to that next destination. You'll still end up with the faster ships landing first, but it will give you a little bit quicker or more compressed warp time, so that people are actually landing at the same time. It doesn't get stragglers don't get caught as easily, and if there is a camp or there's an enemy trouble on the other side, you're jumping in with your full force so that you're not split up and able to be picked off in piecemeal. The last thing that I want to talk about here is some of the different ranges that you need to be aware of. Cannons really get the best range, but that being said, lasers can still be used as extremely effective sniper ships. I think the Apocalypse in particular is really going to be the sniper ship moving forward. For a sniper fleet, you will typically fit 2 or 3 tracking computers. This should give you a range depending on what you are doing, or what ships you're actually using. This will typically give you a range of between 100 to 150 to even 200 kilometers of effective range. With cannons and with the Tornado, I think you can actually get up to about 250. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just put a lot of those numbers into a slide here that I'll pop up on the screen, and you can kind of see in general what those ranges are going to be. Now this is important because, again, as we were talking about earlier, if somebody is out of a bubble and you want to try to pick that target off, rather than just saying everybody pop all of your tracking computers, you can say pop 1, pop 2, pop 3, and that way you kind of know where people are going to be effective, and you can conserve some of those other computers and boosts for when you maybe see another target. If you pop all of them at once, you have a minute to cool down. If you then get another target, you're not able to really reach out and hit them as effectively. And we don't really want that because we want to shoot stuff. You know, it's fine. A couple of other of important ranges. First off, for interdictors, know that most bubbles, assuming that you have at least 5-4 propulsion jamming, you will see likely a 20 to 23 kilometer range on that bubble. That goes for light dictors and Hictors. Then for Guardian bubbles, you've got 7.5 kilometers for a small bubble, 15 kilometers for a medium bubble, and 24 kilometers for a large bubble. Finally, the last range that I want you to be aware of is some of the E-War. The optimal range for E-War is typically in the 35 to 45 kilometer range. I think the target painter might go up to all the way to 60, but just be aware of that so that if you're fighting or if you're trying to get to range, there's really not going to be a whole lot of benefit if you're fighting at 150 kilometers, for example, of equipping E-War. It's not to say that you shouldn't, but again, just be aware of those ranges and think about what range you want to fight at, and then you can actually use that to complement your E-War as well. So that's it, guys. Thanks so much for joining. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed this series, let me know down in the comments below. I'm always looking for other ideas of stuff to make for y'all, so any information that you can give me would be super helpful. Also, if you enjoyed this, as always, you know what to do, like, sub, blah, blah, but no. And so finally, I will just leave you with this, which is the best way to do all of that. So I'll leave you with just the little factoid that if you are looking to do this in more structured format, or if you're just interested in getting involved in the fleet, in being a fleet commander in general, Be sure to check out the link in the description below for the Pandemic Discord. We do a lot of these. We are a heavy PvP corporation, and we're always looking for new pilots and FCs. So if this is something that sounds cool and interesting and you want to fly with me and some of the other folks in Pandemic, be sure to check us out. We'd love to have you. So with that being said, have a great weekend, fly safe, and I'll talk to you in the next video.